The only reason Everett Ellis even showed up to the street festival was because his 7-year-old daughter, Leela, had begged him with those big, hopeful eyes he couldn't say no to. "Daddy, you promised we'd do something fun today," she'd said that morning, standing in the doorway with her glittery pink headband and a tutu she refused to take off even though it was nearly freezing out. So he bundled her up, grabbed her hand, and walked the 6 blocks from their tiny apartment to the festival downtown. He couldn't afford the overpriced food trucks or the artisan crafts, but the live music was free, and Leela danced like she had no idea how hard things were at home. That made it worth it. Everett had just finished pulling a leaf out of Leela's curls when he noticed her running toward a cotton candy stand. "Leela," he called, jogging after her. "Wait, honey, I said we weren't getting." She stopped short, and so did he, because a woman, no, a goddess in jeans and a leather jacket was crouched down, handing Leela a perfect swirl of pink. "I hope it's okay," the woman said, smiling as she glanced up at Everett. Her hair gleamed under the string lights. She said it was her favorite. I can't accept that," Everett said quickly, stepping between them. "We're good, thank you." The woman tilted her head. "It's cotton candy." "Not a car." "Still," he said, glancing at Leela, who was now holding the sugar like it was treasure. "We don't take handouts. It's not a handout." "It's a tiny gift." She grinned, then added softly, "I know what it's like to want to give your kid everything and not always be able to." That made Everett pause. She looked down at her boots, then back up. "I'm Francesca." "Frankie, actually." "Everett. Nice to meet you, Everett." She reached out to shake his hand, her touch warm. "I'm walking that way," she nodded toward the east end of the street. "If you're heading out, I'll walk with you." He hesitated. "That's fine." "We're parked a few blocks down." As they walked, Leela skipped ahead. Frankie kept pace beside him, her hands tucked in her jacket. "You don't strike me as the festival type," she said. "Is it that obvious?" She laughed. "A little." "You've got the look of someone who's got about 10 other things on their mind." He gave a half smile. "Try bills, rent, and a kid who thinks money grows on pink clouds." Frankie glanced over with a mix of curiosity and something softer in her eyes. "Single dad," he nodded. "Since Leela was 2. "I admire that," she said. "Raising a kid alone, that's no small thing," he shrugged. "You just do what you gotta do." They reached the edge of the festival where the noise faded. Frankie looked around, then said, "My place is a few blocks up, not far." "You mind walking me the rest of the way?" Everett looked at her. "You sure? You don't know me," she smiled. "You've got a daughter who adores you. That tells me enough." They walked in silence for a while, the kind that wasn't awkward, just full of unspoken thoughts. She didn't talk like someone who was trying to impress him. There was something grounded about her. "Real? You live around here?" he asked. "Just moved back, actually. Been away a few years." "What brought you back?" She hesitated. "Needed to feel like a person again." He raised an eyebrow. "That sounds heavy." She gave a small laugh. "You ever get so far into a life that doesn't feel like yours, but you keep living it anyway?" "Yeah," he said, surprising himself. Every day, something flickered in her eyes. She stopped in front of a sleek black building with mirrored windows and a doorman who gave her a nod. "This is me," she said. Everett blinked. "This whole building?" "No," she said quickly, laughing. "Just the top floor." He looked up, eyebrows raised. "Penthouse, huh?" She gave a sheepish smile. "Yeah, you always just walk around festivals and buy cotton candy for strangers' kids." "No," she said. "Only when I'm trying to remember what it feels like to be normal, human." "Well," he said, shifting Leela's backpack on his shoulder. "You were very human tonight." She looked at him then, really looked. "You too." Everett cleared his throat. "Thanks for the walk." "Thanks for not making it weird," she said, then glanced at Leela. "She's lucky to have you." He nodded, then turned to go. "Hey, Everett," she called after him. He turned. "I'd like to see you again." He blinked. "Right, I mean it," she said, her voice more serious now. "You're real, I miss that." He looked at Leela, who was half asleep on his shoulder, then back at Frankie. "Yeah, okay, I'd like that too." She smiled again, this time slower. "Good night." "Night, Frankie." He walked away, wondering who the hell she really was, because no woman who lived in a penthouse and wore boots that probably cost more than his rent had any business looking at a guy like him like that, but she had. And that scared him more than he wanted to admit. Everett didn't expect to hear from her again. It had been 5 days since that night. 5 days of waking up at dawn, getting Leela to school, hauling boxes at the warehouse, and coming home too exhausted to think. He hadn't told anyone about her. Not because he was hiding it, he just couldn't figure out what it was. But late Friday afternoon, as he was tossing a cracked soda crate into the dumpster behind the loading dock, his phone buzzed in his back pocket with a call from a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it. Then something told him to answer. "Yeah, hi." The voice was unmistakable, warm, confident. Frankie, he straightened a little. "Hey, listen, I know this is out of the blue, but I was wondering if you and Leela have plans tonight." Everett wiped his hand on his jeans, glancing at the clock over the warehouse bay. "Why? I'd like to take you both somewhere. Nothing fancy," she added quickly. "Just something fun," he hesitated. "I don't really do last-minute things." "I figured," she said lightly. "That's why I made a reservation for 7. If you say no, I'll cancel it." He exhaled slowly. "Where?" "There's a planetarium a few blocks from you. They're doing a night sky show with hot chocolate and telescopes on the roof. I thought Leela might like it." Everett didn't answer right away. "You don't have to say yes," she said, "but I'd really like to see you again, both of you." He ran a hand through his hair. "All right. Yeah. We'll be there." The line went silent for a second, then she said, "Great, I'll text the address." By 7:15, he and Leela were stepping off the bus in front of a glass building with glowing orbs hanging from the ceiling inside. Leela's eyes were wide. "Is this a spaceship?" she asked. "Something like that," Everett said, adjusting her scarf. Frankie was waiting inside. This time she wore a wool coat the color of dark cranberry and a pair of boots that looked more street-ready than anything else. She spotted them instantly. "There you are," she said, crouching to hug Leela. "I'm so glad you came." Everett stood back, watching her with quiet curiosity. She didn't look like someone trying to impress anyone. She looked happy. As they walked through the exhibits, Frankie let Leela pull her from one glowing display to the next. Everett trailed behind, hands in his pockets, watching the way Leela laughed around her like she'd known her forever. "There's a telescope on the roof," Frankie said later as they sipped cocoa from paper cups. "You can see Saturn tonight." "That a fact?" Everett asked, raising an eyebrow. "I called ahead," she said, smiling. "Wanted to make sure it was clear. You always check planetary visibility before making plans. Only when I'm trying to impress a 7-year-old, she said, glancing at Leela. After the show, they stood on the rooftop under a black sky scattered with stars. Leela leaned into the telescope, gasping as she saw the rings. "I didn't know they were real," she whispered. "They're very real," Frankie said softly beside her. Everett stood on the other side, arms folded. "You're good with her." "I like kids," Frankie said. "They're honest. They don't pretend to be okay when they're not." He studied her for a moment. "You do that a lot. Pretend to be okay." She didn't answer right away. Wind brushed a strand of hair across her cheek and she tucked it behind her ear. "I used to," she said. "Not so much anymore." He nodded slowly. "That place you live in, it's not exactly modest." "No," she admitted. "It's not. You with someone?" The question surprised even him. She looked at him, eyes steady. "No, could have fooled me." "I know how it looks," she said. "But that life, it's not what you think. You said you just moved back. From where?" "Geneva. Before that, Dubai. London before that." He let out a low whistle. "Right, just your average girl next door," Frankie laughed. "I told you it wasn't a normal life." He looked at her then, really looked. "So what is it you actually do?" She paused. "I oversee a few companies, investment mostly." Everett gave a short nod, digesting that. "Must pay well." "It does. So why come back here?" "To this city, this neighborhood," Frankie's voice turned quiet. "Because I wanted to remember who I was before all of it, before the money, before the pressure." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he asked, "And who were you?" She looked up at the stars. "Someone who used to think love was more important than empire." Everett's jaw tightened at that. "And now, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that part out." They fell silent again, the wind tugging gently at their coats. Leela yawned against Everett's side, her small hand finding his. "We should get her home," he said. Frankie nodded but didn't move. "Can I give you a ride?" "I don't take handouts." "It's not a handout," she said, echoing her words from before. "It's a ride." He looked at her, weighing something unspoken. Then he nodded once. All right. Outside, a sleek black SUV waited at the curb. The driver stepped forward to open the door without a word. Frankie noticed Everett hesitate. She's with me, Frankie said gently. She's been with my family for years. Everett nodded, helping Leela into the back seat. Frankie climbed in beside her and Everett followed. The ride was quiet, the city lights blurring past in gold and silver ribbons. When they reached his building, Everett turned to her. Thanks for tonight. She looked at him. Will I see you again? He didn't answer right away. Then, you planning another planetary event? I could be, she said, smiling faintly. He considered her. Then yeah, you might. Frankie held his gaze, then leaned forward and kissed Leela's forehead. Good night, Starlight, she whispered. Then she was gone, and Everett stood on the sidewalk, the back of his neck prickling with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. A week later, Everett stood outside the marble lobby of a building so pristine it made him feel like his boots weren't just scuffed, they were offensive. He'd never meant to come here, but Leela had talked about Frankie every night since the planetarium, asking when they'd see her again, and Everett had finally caved. Frankie had left one of Leela's mittens in the SUV, and Everett had used that as an excuse to call. Now he was here, holding the mitten like it was a golden ticket, and trying to figure out if he should ring the buzzer or just turn around. Before he decided, the door opened. Frankie stepped out wearing black slacks and a navy blouse tucked neatly at the waist. Her hair was up, exposing a pair of earrings that glinted subtly in the sun. She stopped short when she saw him. You came. I brought the mitten, Everett said, holding it up. Her eyes softened. You didn't have to come all this way. I would have sent someone. I figured you might want to give it to her yourself. Frankie hesitated, then stepped aside. Come up. He followed her into an elevator lined with dark glass, the kind that didn't have buttons, just a panel that read their destination like it already knew. When they stepped into the penthouse, Everett blinked. The space was massive, open, filled with quiet light and framed art that looked like it belonged in a museum. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline, and sleek furniture was arranged with the kind of precision that made him feel like he shouldn't breathe too hard. I didn't come to gawk, he said, eyes scanning the room. I know, Frankie said, walking to the kitchen. But people usually do. I'm not people. She turned, poured 2 glasses of water and handed him one. No, you're definitely not. Where's the rest of it? He asked, nodding toward the apartment. The noise, the staff, the chaos, I sent them home. She leaned against the counter. I like the silence sometimes, especially lately. Everett looked around again. This place doesn't match you. A faint smile touched her lips. I built it to protect myself. Now it feels more like a museum of who I used to be. He watched her carefully. And who was that? The girl who thought success would make everything feel worth it. And now, Frankie looked down. Now I know success doesn't hold you when you can't sleep. It doesn't laugh at your bad jokes or share cocoa on rooftops. Everett's jaw tensed slightly. You miss real things. I miss honest things. He set the mitten down on the stone island. So what's all this for then? Why keep it? Because walking away from it would be a headline, she said, and I'm tired of being a headline. Everett folded his arms. You're famous, not the way you'd think. I'm not an actress or a singer. She pushed a folder across the counter toward him. This is what I do. He opened it and scanned the top sheet, a portfolio summary. Assets, holdings, venture capital, property acquisitions. His eyes narrowed slightly. You run all this. I own it, she said. And I try to make sure it doesn't own me. He closed the folder. So you're a billionaire? Yes, he stared at her. And you're here, talking to me. I'm not here for the label, she said. I'm here because when I'm with you, I don't feel like a business plan. Everett leaned back against the counter. You know what people like me think when they see someone like you? What? That you've never stood in a grocery aisle with $5 and had to choose between bread and milk. I haven't, she admitted. But I've stood in boardrooms full of suits twice my age who only saw me as someone's daughter, or someone's mistake, and I've had to fight like hell to be taken seriously. He nodded slowly. Different battlegrounds, same bruises. Frankie stepped closer. I don't want to hide who I am. But I don't want it to be the only thing people see. So what do you want me to see? She didn't flinch. Me, the woman who's tired of pretending she doesn't care, the one who likes your daughters laugh more than the sound of a quarterly report. The one who hasn't stopped thinking about you since the street festival. Everett's eyes stayed on hers. You sure you're not just chasing a distraction? No, she said. I've had distractions. This feels like gravity. They were close now, not touching, but charged. You're not scared of where this goes? He asked. I'm terrified, she said honestly. But I'd rather be terrified with you than comfortable with someone I don't feel anything for. He exhaled, slow and heavy. You're not making this easy. I don't want easy, she said. I want right. A soft knock broke the tension. Frankie opened the door, revealing an older woman with a kind face and a tote bag over her shoulder. Mrs. Alvarez, Frankie said warmly, thank you for coming. Of course, she said, stepping inside. Where's the little one? At home with her dad, Frankie said, glancing at Everett. But I was hoping she might stay here for a few hours tomorrow. I have something planned. Everett raised an eyebrow. You hired a sitter, Frankie turned to him. I didn't want to assume. But I'd like to take you somewhere tomorrow, just the two of us, he studied her. Where? I want to show you the part of my world that doesn't live in penthouses and portfolios. And Leela, she'll be safe, I promise. Everett looked at Mrs. Alvarez, who gave him a reassuring smile. Then he looked back at Frankie. All right, he said. Tomorrow, Frankie smiled. Not the kind she gave reporters or board members, something real. I'll pick you up at noon. As Everett stepped into the elevator alone, he glanced down at the mitten in his hand. The one he never actually left behind. He'd brought it to see if she was the same outside that cotton candy glow. And now he knew she was even more. Frankie arrived at exactly noon, but not in a sleek car with a driver or anything Everett could have predicted. Instead, a deep navy vintage convertible pulled up, its engine humming low. She stepped out wearing jeans, ankle boots, and a fitted gray coat that somehow made her look more disarming than any designer gown ever could. Her hair was down, wind-tousled already, and there was a glint of anticipation in her eyes. You ready? She asked as Everett stepped out of the building, zipping up his worn jacket. He glanced at the car. You drive stick. I restore them, she replied. Come on. Today's about movement. They drove with the top down despite the bite in the air, the city falling away as they headed north. Everett didn't ask where they were going. He just let the wind strip away the weight of the week, piece by piece. Eventually, they pulled onto a narrow road lined with trees that had already surrendered most of their leaves. At the end of the drive stood a large, weathered building with a wraparound porch and faded green shutters. Frankie parked. This is where I come when I need to remember what matters. Everett stepped out, eyeing the building. What is this place? I bought it 10 years ago. It was falling apart. Thought I'd flip it, but I couldn't. It felt like it needed something more than polish. So now it's a haven for women starting over. He turned to her. You run a shelter, not officially. It's more private than that. No press, no noise. Just space for women to breathe, especially the ones who have had everything taken. He looked back at the house, his voice low. You built something good. I hope so, she said. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet. Inside, the space was warm and lived in. A few women moved through the kitchen, chatting softly. One of them looked up and beamed, Frankie. You're early. Had someone I wanted to show around, she said, nodding to Everett. This is Janelle. She's the real boss here. Janelle studied him, then smiled. You look like someone who doesn't talk much unless it matters. Everett gave a quiet nod. That's about right. Frankie walked him through the rooms: a small library, a playroom with bright rugs and second-hand toys, a sunroom with art supplies. It's not perfect, she said, but it's safe. The women here don't need lectures. They need quiet, time. Trust, how often are you here? Everett asked. Every week. Sometimes I stay overnight, I cook, I fix door hinges, whatever's needed. He stared at her. This is real. I never told anyone about this, not even my board, she said. I wanted you to see it before you made up your mind about me. Everett leaned on the railing of the sunroom window, watching a young girl draw with chalk on the porch. I already made up my mind, he said. I just didn't know if you'd let me keep it. Frankie's breath caught slightly. What does that mean? He turned toward her. It means I want this, you, not because of the cars or the money or the rooftop stars. I want the woman who builds sanctuaries when no one's looking. She stepped closer. And I want the man who carries his daughter's world without ever asking for help. Everett's voice was steady. Then maybe we stop pretending like we're on opposite sides of something. Frankie touched his hand. I don't want to pretend anything with you. The moment hung there between them, quiet and certain. Later, they returned to the city just after sunset. Instead of dropping him off, Frankie parked and walked with him up to his apartment. Leela was inside, curled on the couch with Mrs. Alvarez, who handed Everett a note as she stood to leave. She read this 3 times, the woman whispered with a chuckle. I think she's got a secret plan. Once she left, Everett unfolded the paper. It was covered in bright purple crayon and said, in uneven lettering, "Can Frankie be my fairy godmother?" He looked up. Frankie was crouched beside Leela, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. She's asleep, she whispered. She usually doesn't nap this early, he said. She was waiting for you, made me promise not to leave until you were home. Everett leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. She already trusts you, Frankie stood. I'm not going anywhere. He studied her face, searching for any trace of doubt. There was none. I've been offered a lot of things in my life, he said quietly. Jobs, loans, pity, but never love, not without a catch. Frankie stepped closer. Then maybe this is the part where you stop expecting the catch. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. His eyes dropped to it. I'm not proposing, she said, laughing softly. Not yet. He raised an eyebrow. Yet, she opened the box. Inside was a silver locket, oval-shaped, engraved with a tiny star. I had this made the day after the planetarium. One side has Leela's initials. The other has yours. She looked up at him. Because you're a package deal and I want both. Everett swallowed hard. You're serious. I've never been more. He took the locket, fingers brushing hers. You sure you want this life with us? She nodded. I want every late-night story, every school pickup, every burned pancake. I want it messy and loud and beautiful. He stared at her for a moment. Then, with one hand behind her neck, he pulled her in and kissed her. It wasn't slow or hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that filled all the hollow places, that rewired everything he thought he knew about want and need. When they broke apart, Frankie whispered, So where do we go from here? Everett glanced at Leela, then back at her. Wherever you want. As long as we go together. Months later, in a garden filled with string lights and laughter, Leela walked down the aisle tossing wildflower petals in a small basket. Frankie stood in a satin dress that shimmered like dusk, her eyes never leaving Everett's. When he reached her, he whispered, You changed everything. She smiled, fingers tightening around his. No, you reminded me who I was. I just finally became it. As vows were spoken and hands were joined, the breeze carried Leela's giggle across the garden. And somewhere between the stars and the soil, the billionaire and the struggling father fell not just in love but home. Everett stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple navy tie at his collar, the knot too tight no matter how many times he redid it. Leela's voice echoed from the hallway, singing something off-key while Mrs. Alvarez tried to coax her into her shoes. The apartment was filled with the kind of warmth that had once felt unreachable, like it belonged to someone else's life. Now it was his. Frankie leaned against the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, watching him with a softness that made his throat tighten. She wore a dress the color of dusk, her curls pinned back, a single sapphire at her throat. You're going to wear a hole in that tie, she said. It's crooked. It's perfect. You're perfect. Everett turned to face her. You sure about this? Frankie stepped forward, resting her palms on his chest. After everything, I've never been more sure of anything. He placed his hands gently over hers. I don't come with sparkle, Frankie, she raised an eyebrow. You came with something better, truth. They didn't need to say more. The city waited outside, but the only thing that mattered was the look between them. The charity gala was held at an art museum Frankie had secretly funded the renovation for, though her name wasn't anywhere on the donor plaques. Everett hadn't known until that morning. She hadn't mentioned it, hadn't wanted credit. She just wanted to build something that would last. As they arrived, the valet blinked when Everett stepped out of the passenger side of the convertible. He wore a suit that Frankie had tailored for him weeks ago, though she'd never forced it on him. She'd just left it hanging in the closet one evening, tags cut off, ready. Inside, the room glittered with low, golden light, and the buzz of conversation echoed off marble columns. Everett stayed close to Frankie's side, his hand resting lightly at her back. They were approached by a man in a sharp tuxedo who extended a hand toward her. Francesca. "I didn't expect to see you tonight, Arthur," she said calmly. "I sent in a silent donation." He looked at Everett. "And this is my partner," she said, her voice steady. Arthur nodded stiffly. "Ah, I see." Everett met his gaze without flinching. "Nice to meet you." Arthur gave a tight smile and moved on. Frankie exhaled once he was gone. "He tried to buy one of my companies last year, didn't like being told no." Everett leaned in. "I like the way you say no." She grinned, then pulled him toward the ballroom where a quartet was playing something soft and elegant. As they stepped onto the floor, people turned, not because of the wealth or the designer gown, but because of the way they looked at each other, as if the entire world had narrowed to that moment. Frankie rested her head near his shoulder as they danced. "You hate this, don't you?" "I hate the performance," he said. "But not this, not you." Her fingers tightened slightly on his. "After tonight, we don't have to come back. We can disappear for a while." "You do that. Leave all this." "I already have," she said. "I just haven't changed the address yet." They danced until Leela arrived with Mrs. Alvarez, wearing a navy dress with silver shoes that sparkled every time she twirled. Frankie knelt down, kissed her cheek, and handed her a tiny corsage made of gardenias. "You're the real star tonight," Frankie whispered. Leela beamed. "Daddy said I could stay until the cake." Everett laughed. "She negotiated." Frankie glanced around the room. "Then I guess we better make this count." Later, as the evening wound down, Frankie stepped onto the small stage near the back and took the microphone. The room hushed instantly. Everett watched her, heart steady. "I wasn't planning to speak," she began, "but I think sometimes silence is a privilege, and I don't want to use it tonight." She paused, her eyes finding his across the crowd. "There was a time I thought building something meant collecting things, properties, numbers, influence. But now I know the most extraordinary thing I've ever built is standing next to me." She stepped down and walked straight to Everett, handing him a small envelope. He opened it slowly. Inside was a deed, his name on it. A modest 2-story house just outside the city. A yard, a porch, a future. "I wanted to give you something that couldn't be taken," she said. "Something that's yours, ours." His voice was low but clear. "I never needed a house, Frankie. I just needed the person who wanted to build one with me." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Then let's build it." They kissed again, this time in front of everyone. And it didn't matter. Because for once, Everett didn't feel like the world was watching him. He felt like it was finally moving with him. He held Frankie close, and Leela ran into his side, hugging them both. The three of them stood there, a triangle of something unshakable, while the city glittered around them. 1 year later, Everett stepped onto the porch of the house they now called home. Leela ran barefoot through the yard, chasing bubbles that swirled in the summer air. Frankie sat on the swing, a sketchbook in her lap, barefoot and laughing. Everett joined her, handing her a glass of lemonade. "She asked if we can get a dog," he said. Frankie raised her eyebrow. "You ready for that?" "I think I'm ready for anything." "As long as you're here." She leaned into him. "I'm not going anywhere." The wind rustled through the trees. The scent of fresh grass and lemons floated through the air. And in that quiet, perfect moment, Everett knew he hadn't just fallen in love, he'd landed safely, completely, forever.